All right, today I am talking with Joe Hendricks. He is the owner of Elope Telluride and just happens to be an old, not old, a seasoned friend of mine. We've known each other for years and years, and it's just been such a joy to watch your adventures as a family. To give everybody watching and or listening right now a little bit of background, Joe and I came up in the Nashville market together until he and his wife decided to get this like crazy idea to just like move into a camper and travel for a while. And I was like, man, this guy is crazy. And now I'm saying that from my camper in Maine. We've been on the road now for a little over a year and a half. Everything that I do, Joe has done before me. Joe and his wife now live in, you guys are in Montrose, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah. So Montrose, Colorado, where he specializes in elopements, hence Elope Telluride. And he is one of the most talented photographers that you'll see on the interwebs. He's a phenomenally talented man and just a truly genuinely good human being, which is why we're still friends. I don't know why you keep me around, but I know
Oh
why
yeah,
I keep
you're an inspiration to me.
so.
Ain't
Oh,
that it?
whatever, man. Anyway, so this is Joe. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know it. Tell everybody
Sure.
else a little bit about your background.
Chris, as I was a wedding photographer in Nashville, skipping past learning photography in the Navy. That's where I started as a Navy photographer. Got out, did a couple things, and got into wedding photography when I lost my job in the liquor industry. And then that's when I met you and a whole bunch of other amazing photographers in Nashville, and just did my best to learn the wedding photography industry and improve myself as a photographer along the way and talking to people and all that good stuff. And I did that for about 12 years in Nashville.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, I got an itch because wedding photography was starting to bore me because I was getting into the more expensive weddings, and that may sound great, but then I found myself shooting details all the time. And I don't like to shoot details. But when they spend $100,000 on flowers, that's what you shoot.
Right.
And yeah, so we bought an Airstream, traveled America, brought my mother-in-law for a little bit. And that's a whole nother story and a whole nother podcast.
I was going to say, I don't think she's watching this, but let's just end it there just in case.
That's right. It lasted 7 days for that part. But we continued on for about a year and a half to 2 years in the Airstream. And then it came time to find a place to live. Montrose, Colorado called us. As they say, the mountains were calling. And we started the elopement photography business called Elope Telluride right here. And I've never been more successful as a photographer. Like, we've made more money, we've been happier. Everything has been up and away here in Montrose, Colorado, doing Elope Telluride. We're loving it.
Yeah, even watching from a distance, and we'll get into this, but even watching from a distance, we saw your work go from truly solid work to exceptional work. And it just
Thank you.
seems like you guys really found your groove and it just took off from there. So that's really what I was hoping to dig into today is
Yeah.
this shift from you were never really like a hey I'll just shoot whatever comes through the door. Like you were still specializing some families and some weddings, but it wasn't to the degree that you are now where it's now we shoot elopements. And I feel what you said about once you start getting into those upper prices, people are spending so much money on the details that yeah that you become like
No photographer.
a detail, yeah, a product photographer essentially.
Yeah,
But
you-
you don't have the fancy setups that most product photographers have. You have a speed light that you're trying to hold kind of
yeah.
like this with one hand. And yeah,
And you're
so
hustling before they come in for the reception and everything else. Yeah,
exactly,
you got to do it in
exactly.
between everything else. Yeah.
Yep. So I feel that in my core. I haven't shot weddings now in a minute, but I can still feel that, right? That
Yeah.
pressure to like, oh, I have to get all of these details and I have to make sure that great Aunt Gertrude gets photographed and all of that.
I
But
remember a photography couple that only did details at weddings. I always thought that was weird until I got to the point where I got it because the weddings were so expensive. Yeah,
yeah,
and they had their
yeah,
niche and it worked.
yep.
So niches are great.
So there was a couple like that. I don't know if it's the same one that you're talking about, but there was a couple like that in Nashville. We shot an engagement party. Yeah, engagement party that was at the Country Music Hall of Fame. It was a $100,000 or $200,000 engagement party. It's just a stupid amount of money, right?
Well, yeah.
And yeah, a couple showed up to that because we were hired to shoot the engagement party, and not the wedding. Sean and Mel got the wedding, of course. But and I hear that it topped out over 1 million because the dad of the bride had to outshine the dad of the groom.
Goodness.
But yeah, a couple showed up and we were like, "Who are you?" They're like, "Oh, we're
Probably
for
wasn't the same
details."
couple.
And I was like, "Okay, sounds good to me. Go do your thing. I don't want any part of that." Yeah, they had like a what do they call that? Flash mob, like full choreographed Bollywood style dance routine and all of this stuff. And I was
Oh, wow.
this is next level here. I don't belong here, guys. But anyway, you traveled around, did all this stuff. You landed in Colorado, which is funny because we were in Colorado and then now we're traveling around, and I don't think we'll land in Nashville, but it seemed like you guys maybe tried to just jump back into where you were with weddings in Montrose, and then it evolved into elopements, or am I just seeing from the
No.
outside something different?
Yeah. So the way it worked here is I was going to get into landscape photography. And that's why we came to Montrose because it was so central to so much other stuff. But I feel as a professional photographer that landscape photography is probably the hardest to make it in because there's so much competition and it's just really hard to set yourself apart. So I felt that when I first got here. And then Rhonda said, well, we could always do weddings. And I'm like, no, we're not doing weddings. But I know my wife, and I know it makes her come alive to talk to the brides. And I like to see that part of my wife. So I came to a compromise. I said, I won't shoot weddings, but I will shoot elopements. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to get 3 couples that are already married that still have their wedding dress and suit and all that stuff. Let's go out and shoot them. We'll get a portfolio going and see what happens. So I bought elopetelluride.com. I was amazed nobody had that.
Which I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
what?
And then I went and bought eloperay.com, eloperidgeway.com, Elope Crested Butte, elopemoab.com. I have them all because I want to franchise it eventually someday, hopefully.
That's awesome.
And then it was really slow. First year we had like 3 or 4 elopements, and that's it. And we were struggling. I had to borrow money from my dad, which I've never done before. But it was a very humbling experience, and it made me work harder. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit and all the weddings canceled, we shot through the roof. And we ended up shooting about 26 that year. This year we already have about 34, 35, and we're still booking. And it's been life-changing for us because now I'm photographing 2 people normally up in the mountains with a max of 10 people. And all we are doing is elopements. And I
Yeah.
turn down every single wedding because I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful feeling.
Right. And I don't know why I didn't think about that COVID for you guys really was the trigger to just that
Yeah.
everybody was like, oh, I can't have this big wedding anymore, but we don't want to wait. So why don't we just take all that money we were about to spend and give it to Jen, go to Colorado and have this epic in a different way wedding. And then I'm assuming that this is the case, that after now that COVID is quote unquote over, a lot of just mindset shifts have happened where people are like, I don't need that giant wedding anymore. Maybe these
Yeah.
things that seemed important 2 or 3 years ago are not really as important as we thought they were. Are you seeing that still? Were you guys worried that, oh man, once this settles down, then elopements are going to fall off again? Or are you seeing that happen where people are saying like, nope, this is still
I don't think we thought that elopements might fall shorter. They have just kept growing, but like you were saying, more people have seen a shift in the way that they are thinking. And they're thinking about what's more important to them. The only reason the family ever gets invited to an elopement is because they invite themselves, because mom and dad want to be there. And you have that old stereotype of what a wedding is supposed to be, how it's supposed to be, and everything else. And I find myself explaining to couples often to explain to their parents what to expect. Just 4 days ago, I took a couple out. They had 8 people with them, and the parents and the grandparents were saying, where's the venue at? And I was like, the
Yeah.
venue's out in the middle of a field
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
mountains. And it's hard
Fair.
for
Yeah.
people to wrap their heads around it. Once they see it and experience it, they love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it. But
Yeah.
they have to get past that old stereotype.
So, man, okay, so this brings up so many things that I would love to talk with you about.
Cool.
Talk about this transition now to specializing in this one thing. Like, how has that? I know you said that, okay, your business is doing better than it ever has. Can you elaborate on that? Why do you think that's happening? And
Um,
what's changed?
the main thing that's changed is we've marketed ourselves as elopements only. That's all I have a desire to shoot. It's where I
Yeah.
feel my best. So all of our efforts go towards elopements, every single
Yeah.
bit of it. We don't advertise, we just put on social media. And when couples come to us, there is no question in their mind what we do for a business. It says it in the name, says it in our website, everything we talk about. When couples say, "Hey, I have 20 people, can you shoot that?" I say, "No, but I can refer you to another couple." And they're like, "Really?" And they may get a little upset, but I tell them, "Look, this is what we're doing. We're trying to keep it intimate." And
Yep.
when I explain it to them, I say, "Look, if you bring 10 people, 20 people out to a spot, you're gonna trample all the wildflowers. It's
Mm,
you need to have 2 or 3 cars, and most of the time you can only fit so many. So everything we do is geared towards elopements.
yeah.
I think it helps people make a decision easier, knowing that there's no question about what they can get.
Yes.
And when you only offer so many things, it's either yes or no before they
Yeah.
even get to you. Like they pretty much everybody knows they want to hire me before they get to me.
Yep. Yeah. That I think that in specializing, you have this built-in filter of, okay, I have too many people, so that's a no. I have enough people. Oh, I qualify essentially. It's, oh my gosh, wait, no, I am the right fit. So they're almost
Right.
checking to see if they're good enough for you. Oh, if they're going to work for you. And man, how does that turn the tables?
And basically the only thing they're worried about now is whether we get along. And
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I want to get along with them. And every once in a while a couple comes across, I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. So I'll tell
Yeah.
Rhonda, I'm like, hey, Rhonda, I don't think we should book this couple.
Not worth it. Yep.
Yeah.
Not worth it. And to be in a place just a couple years ago to have had to borrow money, to be in a place to be able to say,
Yeah.
hey, look, that's a few $1,000s that's just not worth it. I think that speaks a lot to where you guys are as a business and to just how much about what it is that you do and what you want to do, who you want to serve. And yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm sure you've been through the process before where you've hired or you've taken pictures for the wrong person that's
yeah,
made you feel like crap, that
no,
just brings everything down inside of you, and it's just not worth the pain to shoot people like
right.
that.
Yeah. So something else you said a minute ago that I want to dig into a little bit was this idea that you focus all of your efforts now on elopements. And from a practical standpoint, I was looking at the blog and everything, and what that really means is that you don't have to try to create all this content. Like you can create like, here's stuff on how to elope to Colorado. Great. That's something that your person's going to need. You just mentioned something a minute ago about one of the things you end up explaining is how to talk to your parents about like set expectations for parents. Like that's an amazing piece of content to be able to create that blog post, create that as a download or whatever for that person who's it's 2 in the morning and she's like in an incognito window because she just doesn't want anyone to know that she's even considering doing this crazy thing, right? And to be able to have a little download or something that says, hey, look, here's how to tell your parents what it is that you're doing. And here's how to set their expectations for what's going to happen. All of that stuff. Not only is it qualifying people, but it's building rapport with them. It's setting you aside as a professional, as somebody who knows this thing. And especially for elopement, because they are so out of the norm, to be able to go to somebody who only does those, who knows everything there is to know about them and all of the best places, all of the best locations. That's got to be such a weight off of the bride's or a couple's, should say, off of their shoulders to be able to say, oh, I don't really need to figure it all out because I just hired Joe. Like this just,
Absolutely. Yeah, and our highest package right now is $7,000,
yeah,
and for that, it's all inclusive.
yep,
So,
I saw that.
literally, the couple says we talk about where they want to elope. I set up the time, I get the officiant if they want one. I set up hair and makeup. I say I, but Rhonda sets up that. We're a
Right.
team. And they literally don't worry about a thing. And then they arrive and they don't even know what's happening that day. We take care of everything. They just know they're getting married. They know they're gonna have an adventure. It's the most stressless thing that like you will ever do to get married. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want anybody watching or listening right now, if you're married, think back to your wedding and to the year or whatever before it of planning all of those details and worrying about, oh my gosh, is this thing going to show up or whatever? And then put yourself in the shoes of one of Joe's couples where he just said they show up and they're like, what are we doing today? I know that we're getting married, but I don't know where it is. And maybe that invokes like stress for some people, but that just shows again that for those people right now listening to this who are like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Guess what? You're probably a Joe client. For the
Mhm.
people who are like, oh my gosh, that just kills me, you're probably
You're
not a
not.
Joe client. But and that's okay. There's plenty of other photographers out there for you. Um, but man, I would have loved that, man. Just show
Me
up and
too.
just know that Joe's gonna take care of it.
Oh
Um,
man.
I love this for you too, because I feel like you were the weddings that you guys were doing in Nashville, they were all fairly traditional weddings, and I think that meant that you ended up taking fairly traditional wedding photos. I say that. I know that you guys have a flair for some really creative, really cool stuff, especially your like your silhouette work. And yeah, you guys do some really cool stuff. You do a lot of out of the box stuff, but you were constrained to this very traditional thing. For you as an artist and just as a person, how has switching to this more non-traditional wedding type, how has that impacted your art and just you in general?
Oh, it's made all the difference in the world. First off, I have to pinch myself every time I go up with a couple into the mountains because it's just the most amazing feeling. And then I get to be there while these two people are being so intimate with each other and they trust me completely. And then they allow me to be as creative as I want. And in weddings, you're going from one place to one place. You have times to be at different places. An elopement, you take your time. If they're running late on hair and makeup, an hour late. At a wedding, that'd be a stressful situation. At an elopement, I'm like, guys, the sun's still gonna be there. National Forest isn't gonna close. We're gonna be fine.
Yeah,
And
we're good.
and when people are that comfortable already, and then you talk to them and make them laugh throughout the day and have fun and bring snacks and champagne for them, it just makes the whole entire day awesome. And I can be as creative as I want. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I don't even have to show them a picture all day long because they have the picture right in front of them with that view.
Right.
So they don't need to see that I'm doing my job.
Yep.
And then I give them 5 to 10 pictures that night. So
Nice.
they get to enjoy the day all over again that night when they get home. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I think you hit on the thing for me that it was the couples and the people and all of that, that none of that really stressed me out. It was the schedules. It was the we have to do this. And more so, it was the expectation of I hired Chris and like our last few weddings were $10,000. It's this idea that we hired Chris and Adrian for this kind of work, but then they give me like 15 minutes to like produce that. And that stress for me was just unbearable. So to be in a position like you're saying where it's yeah we're an hour late so what it's not going to close like how freeing is that to make you feel like
Yeah.
okay yeah I can still do my job I can still get what I need to get because
And
this is it because I don't have to worry about everybody else's everything.
that's
You know,
right.
it's just, yeah it's
Well,
cool.
and in the elopement world, there's a stigma, even with photographers, that there are some elopement photographers that do all day stuff. They wake up with you in a tent, they travel with you 4 miles in the mountains, and then they take pictures of you under the stars at night. And when you take all that into the equation, then it ends up being a lot harder than a wedding will ever be, physically demanding on you. But
Yeah,
I want no part of that. So I'm 47 now. I can't believe I'm 47
right.
shooting elopements. but I'm having the time of my life and I'm doing it the way I want. So my elopements are usually no longer than 6 hours. I
Yep.
drive everywhere. So we don't really hike. Every once in a while, I get a couple that wants to hike 4 miles in snowshoes, wear me out. But they're fun. You just don't get as many pictures. And I've gone super niche and I'm staying in this area. A lot of younger elopement photographers want to travel to Greece and Iceland and all these other places. And I love that for them. And I would have done that when I was younger. But for me, I want to be here. And being in the same place all the time, being super niche, I think has helped us out so much because we know this area. And when rain hits, I know where to take you when the
Yep.
weather gets bad and all that stuff. And if you are an elopement photographer, you travel to Cuba or whatever, you're relying on tour guides or other
Yep.
people to take you around to all these amazing spots. So there's something to be said about being the expert in an area. And it's really worked well for us.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe getting to the crux of the whole conversation is not only are you an expert in a type of wedding at this point, elopements, but you're an expert in that thing in a specific area. So you really are a go-to person. And it looks like that really simplifies things across the board for you as an artist, for schedules, for marketing, for
Mhm.
content that you need to produce, like all of it just needs to be elopements in these three cities.
Yep.
Basically, I say cities, towns, areas.
Correct.
Yeah. And eventually in a few more when you decide to franchise. So for
Right.
anybody listening who's like, I could live in Moab, talk to Joe and
Yeah,
submit your
that may be one
portfolio.
of our first franchises because it's far enough away to where it's not direct competition with us, but we're writing down the whole entire business and the pieces of it and everything else. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just when you talk about franchising, it's just finding the right personality of a photographer with the skills. And they don't even have to have all the skills. I can train them to be really good photographers, but finding the personality and
Yep.
and the talent is going to be the hardest part. But yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
just
It's
gonna
exciting.
clone
Well,
Rhonda, and because Rhonda is really the key to our business because she does all the emailing, admin, she does everything. I don't know if that's how it was with you and Adrienne, where she did one thing and you did other things,
yep.
because I know you both did photography. You're both
Yep.
super talented at it. Rhonda doesn't do any photography. She just
Yeah.
does emailing. And when a bride emails her, "Oh my gosh, we got an inquiry." Like, she's so
Yeah.
happy and she emails them back right away, and
Yep.
she's amazing. So I have to clone her and give them to the next franchise that we open.
So what I hear is when we're done traveling, that maybe there's a franchise I could start and
Totally.
spin up in a really cool city.
You would be
Um,
really good at it.
although I'm gonna have to request like Big Sky, Montana, elope Big Sky or something like that. So if you
Okay.
can go buy that domain, then I think
I better do
Montana's
it
gonna
before
be
you air this.
right. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so for anybody listening who's thinking, okay, I don't want to specialize in elopements, or I don't live in an epic place like that, like Elope Toledo. No offense to anybody in Toledo, but maybe they're starting to get sold on this idea of specializing, of becoming an expert in a niche. Do you think that the success that you guys have found in specializing in elopement could carry over to specializing in other things? Is it the fact that you specialized in something that has really driven things, or is it like, no, for you guys, it sounds like it had to have been elopements. That's just the thing that fit.
Right. For us, it was elopements. Yes, you can
Yeah.
specialize in anything. And I've had this conversation 100 times with other people. Never have we lived in such an age where you could specialize in what you love and be successful at it. The example I give is there's a kid on TikTok who does yo-yo. That's all he does is yo. He's 15 years old. He's amazing at yo-yo. 20 years ago, people would have made fun of him at school. Like, he would have been the yo-yo guy. Just he would probably have very little opportunity at success at
Yeah.
yo-yo. But
Yeah.
now he can just get on TikTok, social media, or whatever, show yo-yo all the time, get endorsed by yo-yo, get paid by yo-yo companies, and make a living doing what he loves. And when it comes to photography, there are so many things you can niche in. And I've talked with other landscape photographers and stuff. If you can do something that is out of the ordinary that you do every single time. Like, I know a guy who gets marmots in his pictures. He gets marmots in his pictures every once in a while. And I told him, I was like, dude, if you got a marmot in your picture every single time, even if it's far away, it could be like a Where's Waldo type of thing. Where's the marmot? There's a marmot in this huge landscape picture and you got to find it. And that's your niche. And if you do that every single time, I think it would be super successful. But I think a lot of people think that's too simple. They're like, no, that's not going to work. And they also, and photographers are, they do this all the time. I'm super talented at many things. I can do product photography. I can do weddings. I can do all this stuff. And they just need to find the thing they love to shoot more than anything else. And that's hard for a creative person to do, to say
Yep.
just this one thing. But
Yep.
that's what we've done with elopements, and that's why it's successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. And I think that, this idea of like, when we talk specialization, it doesn't mean you can't go shoot that stuff. It just means
Right.
that you're not showing it in
Correct.
this venue. If absolute, I say worst case, like if you absolutely have to, stand up separate brands, stand up separate businesses so that people are only seeing that thing that they want to know that you are an expert at.
So
But
you would probably never know that I shoot fly fishing reels on the.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
exactly.
shoot fly fishing reels for Ross Reels and Abel Reels every once in a while,
Nice.
and it's just fun because I have an enthusiasm for fly fishing. But
Yep.
I will never show it on Elope Telluride or my social media or anything else.
Yep.
But that's just something I love to shoot on the side.
Exactly. So perfect example. Yeah, that's a perfect example. So yeah, I love watching what you guys are up to. And
Thanks.
I think one thing that just struck me as you said this was these landscape photographers are taking these big epic landscapes. And it
Mhm.
just occurred to me that this business is full circle for you because you were doing weddings and then you started getting into landscapes and you were like, I really love this landscape. And then when I look at your work, that's what I'm looking at is I'm looking at an epic landscape photo that would on its own be an amazing landscape photo, but you brought in something that you are also incredibly talented and you just take a couple and you put them in the middle of this epic landscape and that's it. And that's Joe Hendricks to me now
Yeah.
is what does Joe do? Oh, he takes these amazing landscape photos that just happen to have a wedding couple in them.
And
And
I used to say when I was doing landscapes, I used to think in my mind, man, I wish I had a couple right here. And I would think that. And as a photographer, you need to listen to the voices in your head. If you are desiring a couple to be in the middle of your photos, maybe you're an elopement photographer if you're out there taking landscapes. If you
yep,
want to be away from the world, you don't want a single person around you, maybe you're a landscape photographer who wants to be alone for weeks on end, all by
yep,
yourself. You just got to
waiting for
listen
that
to that
for the
voice.
perfect sun and clouds and yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to hit on last, I think there's lots of other stuff that I could talk to you about it for hours, but we should probably wrap this up. The thing I want to talk about
Fine.
last is this experience. We've talked about the experience for the brides, and I want people to think about what this looks like after the fact. So,
Mm.
what I mean by that is, okay, one of Joe's couples gets to go home after their elopement. A few weeks later, they get this epic, probably metal, like 30 by 45 or something to put up on their dining room wall. I hope. And if not, we're talking about that soon. You and I
We should talk
are
about
going to
it.
discuss. They're going to end up with this massive thing. Guess what? When their friends come over, it's not going to be about that photo. It's going to start as about that photo. It's going to start as, holy crap, that's incredible. Where was this? Oh, it was here. Guess what? They're not going to stop talking there. It's going to be, oh, it was here. And this is how it all went down. And guess what? I didn't have to plan any of it. And then it immediately shifts from being about the image to about the experience, to about the story behind the day. And Joe is in such a unique position to be able to craft that story, to be able to have full control over what that story looks like and to be able to serve his clients in a way that gives them a story that so many other couples do not have. I can see this being one of the things where a bride's friend would be the cut. Like this to me is the sign that like you're doing something right. When the friend of one of your couples tells a different friend, oh, hey, tell her about the thing that you guys did. right? Oh, yeah, have you seen the photo they have on their wall? Tell her about that thing. You'll never believe this. She did this. And I can 100% see that happening. This is truly what word of mouth marketing looks like. And then for that couple who is unmarried and who's eight, that's incredible. And so is the experience behind it. Maybe I
Yeah.
don't need to do all of this stuff. So I
And
guess there wasn't really a question there
oh,
other
that's
than
okay.
I
Well,
just think that you're doing it right, man. I think you found the secret. Maybe we should never air this
thanks,
so
brother.
that
No,
nobody
you
else
know,
discovers it.
hey, let other people do it. You know what? I never want to keep anything to myself. I want to share what is possible out there for other photographers. Just don't come to Telluride. Just go to other places. But anyways, what I was gonna say in that experience that you were just talking about, as the person who's taking the picture, you have the ability to really affect people's lives. And my favorite thing to tell couples, even though they get the picture on the wall and all that stuff, my favorite thing to tell them is, look, marriage is not the easiest thing in the world. And you're going to have times in your marriage where you just need to reconnect with how it all started. And unlike people who get married at a wedding, they're not going to go back to the church and go, oh, baby, this is where we said I do. No.
Mm.
But they would love to go on a hike back up to that mountain, back to where they said their vows. Getting a little emotional just talking about it. But being able to go back up there, seeing that sunset, seeing that moment and feeling the wind, that does something to a couple. And we need that in our lives. And that's what elopements give people, is it gives them a chance to reconnect later on down the line with where it all started.
Yeah, yeah. And you said that, and I immediately thought hiking up there with their kids
Yeah.
10 years from now or whatever. And just that idea of getting there and then being like, yeah, it was right here. Yeah, this was it. And
This is where
being
your
able to
mom
share
and
that.
I said I
Yeah,
do.
this is where we got married. It was right here. And maybe even the kids being able to be like, it was here because I recognize it from that photo that we've seen for all our lives and all of that.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Like
Really
later
cool.
on, they just want to go find the place. And yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's
I
everything
didn't
about
even
it's
think
super
about that.
emotional.
And it does. It almost becomes, not even almost, it becomes like a sacred spot for a couple
Yeah.
because something really important occurred there. I can see that being almost an anchor for a couple of when the crap hits fan, using that as that North Star, come back to that point and be like, no,
Yeah.
this is where it began and this is what it was about. And this is why this is important.
Mm.
That's cool.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think you're onto something here, man.
I think if more photographers are loving what they're doing, there are people who love weddings, and I loved the stress of a wedding, but my feet didn't afterwards. But if you can find what you love doing and you can share that with them, the world's gonna be a better place for it. So
Yep. Amen to that.
yeah.
Excellent. Joe, thank you so much for doing this. So if somebody wants to reach out and be like, hey, I heard this thing. This sounds pretty cool. I have some questions. What's the best way for them to reach you?
I would have them email me at joe@joehendricks.com and
Yep.
not at joe@elopetelluride.com, because that's where all the brides and grooms
Yep.
go. But if you want to talk to me as a photographer, I love talking to people. I get on Zooms all the time and just chat with people one-on-one. If I can inspire you in some way or another, and I've got the time to do it, I will. So joehendricks.com, and that's CKS at the end of my name.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll put that in the post as well and in the description and everything. Excellent. Excellent. Is Rhonda around?
She's sleeping.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Because
It's 7 o'clock.
like 7:45. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. All right. Here, I'm going to stop this recording because I have